Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started, and what are they doing to stay there? And today, I have a special guest. I'm getting to talk to Craig Davis. He's the president and CEO of Visit Dallas. And Craig, I'm glad to have you on the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, Bruce.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. And I always like to, kind of start off by reflecting by, when did I meet my guests, or maybe when did they come into my path? And for you, I actually met you at a European American Chamber of Commerce event back in April, where, of course, the director, Aaron McKelvey, is leading that group. And you were speaking, and I just thought, man, I've got to get you on the show. Do you remember that event? And what'd you think about that?
I do remember it well. I thought it was a great event. So, for me, a lot of what we do, our job is to bring visitation into Dallas, Texas. And that comes by any means, it comes from all over the world. We bring it in through individual people that jump on a plane and come into Dallas, or group business, or any other form of tourism. So the European Chamber is a great link for us because we are an international city, having two major airports, one international airport that has flights all over the world. It's important that we connect with the community that's involved with European and or overseas business.
Well, great event. Really loved hearing what you had to say, and we're going to talk about some of those things in the great city of Dallas. And so to kind of get started, though, would like for you. I first heard of Visit Dallas whenever I saw that one of my good friends, Lisa Welch, went to Visit Dallas,
Yes.
and of course, Lisa's the vice president of people, fantastic leader. And whenever I saw she went over there, I started looking into Visit Dallas. So I didn't know a whole lot. So for the listeners, would you share a little bit about Visit Dallas, and how do you serve your customers?
So what we are, there's one of our organizations like us in every city, pretty much in the world. Some are very, very big, and most are very, very small. But they are tasked with promoting that destination to make sure that that's top of mind of anybody who is deciding where they're going to go for vacation or for a long weekend, or they're going to bring their convention or their meeting. So we have a team of actually, about now we're back up to 72, 73 people, whose task it is to put Dallas top of mind for people all over the world. So we have a lot of presence here in the United States. We have a very robust sales team that connects with customers that book conventions and sporting events into different cities. We develop relationships and put Dallas in the forefront of their minds as they're considering where they're going to go next. From the standpoint of around the world, we have public relations groups that we have brought into our fold around the world where it makes strategic sense to talk about Dallas to those different places and get people to think about, it's worth getting on a plane and flying into Dallas and seeing what we have. And so for so many reasons, Dallas is tremendously successful. And how we're funded is through and we all know this, when we go into a destination and you get your hotel bill at the end and you look at all those taxes on the hotel bill, we get a little piece of one of the taxes that is paid for by visitors to Dallas. So by extension, people from Dallas don't pay for our services. And our services are free, other than getting a part of the hotel tax that's created through visitation in Dallas.
That's fantastic. Very interesting. I live in Crossroads, Texas. So I'm out here in the sticks on the north end of Lake Louisville.
Yeah.
And so we don't go into Dallas a lot, but when I'm in Dallas for a meeting or an event, I just love it. I love the vibe. And I moved here back in 1995. So I've been here now for 27 years, and I definitely call it my home. And every time I go to Dallas, I learn something new, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or an incredible building. And so I want to talk about some of that stuff. And I want to kick this off, though. I want to hear the Craig Davis story. Like where did you grow up, and how in the world did you get into leadership and have this passion to attract people into cities?
Well, I grew up in Canada, not far from Toronto, and I
Okay.
went to school at the University of Western Ontario, which is in London, Ontario, and London is halfway between Toronto and Detroit. I went to school there, and as I was finishing my degree, I was disillusioned with what I wanted to do. And in the summers, I worked for the school in their campus. We turned the campus into essentially a series of hotels and conference space in the summer. And I got bitten by the bug to be in a hotel. So it was very natural for me after I graduated from college to apply at hotels. And I was lucky enough to be picked up by Hilton International Hotels in Toronto. And I started my career there and was, after 4 years in two hotels in Toronto with the same company, transferred to the Drake Hotel in Chicago. And so
Mm.
I spent a number of years at the Drake. And then I was transferred for my first director of sales and marketing opportunity to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I spent 30 years in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I started my career there in hotels. But eventually, I was recruited to join what we were then called convention and visitors bureaus. I was then recruited to the Pittsburgh Convention and Visitors Bureau, which eventually became Visit Pittsburgh. So I started as their VP of sales, and I had three jobs there over 20 years in Pittsburgh at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, or Visit Pittsburgh. And I became their CEO for the last 6 years of my career. And then kind of outgrew the city a little bit, and I was recruited here to Dallas, Texas. So I arrived in Dallas 2.5 years ago, right before the pandemic. But
Oh,
it has been not only a wild ride, it has been so satisfying. Myself and my fiance Kathleen love Dallas, and we feel like we've always lived here.
well, I feel like you got a couple of challenges here. Number one, challenge is you moved here right before COVID. Little did you know what you were going to go through over the next couple of years. So I'm sure that's been very challenging. The other challenge is coming from Pittsburgh as a Dallas Cowboys fan.
So, so here's the joke was, and it was really true when so as it was kind of looking like I was going to get this job, and I was on I think my second set of interviews. One of the interviewers said to me, "So, are you going to be a Cowboys fan?" Just jokingly, and my retort was, "There's enough love in my heart for an NFC team." So I am a Dallas Cowboys fan, but I have to admit that, I spent 30 years in Pittsburgh. I watched them win three Super Bowls. It's pretty hard not to fall in love with a team. So, I will always be a Steelers fan, but I represent Dallas. I have all the gear, and I go to almost all the games. So it's pretty easy for me, and it makes a lot of sense for me to be a fan. But I'm not that fickle. I'm going to be a Steelers fan until the day
I
I
love it. I love it.
die.
Hey, I want to ask you this question, and before we get into a visit Dallas and some of the really neat things you're doing and some of
Yeah.
the challenges you have, you talked about you relocation. Of course, that's my language, right? I mean, but as you moved in your career, you had the courage to relocate to these different places, and then of course you spent a long time in Pittsburgh, and now here you are in Dallas. Was there a moment that you found your lane, you found your calling on what you wanted to do in your career?
You know, I knew that I didn't want to be a director of sales and marketing at a hotel for my entire life. When I first became a director of sales and marketing at a Hilton International Hotel in Pittsburgh, shortly thereafter, the hotel was purchased by somebody, and then they dropped the flag and they gained another flag. And at that time, I was a Canadian citizen, and so I had to leave the hotel because that company held my visa. So I was transferred back to the Drake Hotel as the director of sales and marketing, which was a blessing. I mean, to have that hotel on my resume opened up the door for the rest of my life. So it was a bad time, but it was a great time to have that happen. So, but it wasn't, I always thought what I had to have an exit plan for myself, that how am I going to get out of hotels? Because I didn't want to be at the mercy of hotels getting bought and sold
Hmm.
and being told if I loved a certain city, that saying, "Hey, guess what? You're being transferred to wherever." And a lot of the times, at least back then, there was a lot of value placed on the person that relocates, moves up quickly. And when I was single and young, I would go at the drop of a hat. They would say, I need you in Pittsburgh on Monday. I'd say, okay, I'm going to go home and pack my bags, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I was the first one to say, yeah, I'll go, even sight unseen, probably very naive, but I always trusted my bosses and I did what they asked. And it really worked out for me well. But it wasn't until I joined the Convention and Visitors Bureau, or when I joined Visit Pittsburgh, then I really realized that was the intersection of all of my experience and all of my natural abilities, quite frankly. So our jobs are a little bit different because they're very much a sales and marketing job, but you have to be really good with your community, and you have to really have a close and meaningful relationship with elected officials.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of small p politics involved in what I do because we take public money. We are in we live in a glass house, and we are scrutinized by the public, as we should be, because we're given the ability to use public funds through the hotel tax. Then that scrutiny, the person that runs those various organizations has to be the type that that really is somebody that wants to be transparent and wants to do right for the community. So I found that when I got to Pittsburgh in that role, I had been waiting all my life for it. And then coming here to Dallas, and you said that, I moved with Kathleen, my fiance, here, and we had the time of our life, the very first, even despite COVID, we were given such an incredibly warm welcome here in Dallas. And we have met lifelong friends, and we met most of them within the first 6 months of living here. So it's been an incredibly welcoming community. And my joke is, because I just said I'm from Canada, Dallasites make Canadians look like they're from Philadelphia. So, and Canadians are the nicest people on the planet, but Dallas puts them to shame. And that is nothing to say about my country of birth, but the people here in Dallas want/need you to succeed, and they will help you succeed if you are earnest in your quest for that success.
I love that. I've visited Montreal one time with my family, and that was just an incredible, warm spirited place. And for you to hear, for me to hear you talk about Dallas having that warm spirit, that's really cool. I will tell you that, when you talk about transparent, that's what I felt whenever you were talking with the EACC that night. I just felt like you were like open, transparent. Hey, listen, I'm here to win. I want you to know what's going on because we can all win together. I just felt it was an incredible energy, just that 30 minutes. And I thought you did a great job. I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about a little bit about Dallas. And by the way, as we talk about Visit Dallas and you talk about these other cities, I never realized that it really, it's that Convention or Visitors Bureau. It's just framed up a little bit differently. And and I think that's what it takes, right? We got to figure out how to frame up different messages, all these different things that you're doing, so people can like see the big picture on, why Dallas. I want to ask you, and as you've been here for a short time, a little over 2 years. What experiences have you had that you've seen that's made Dallas stand out besides the warm welcoming?
Well, let me put this. I'm going to tell you a quick story how it sort of exemplified. I get in for my very first few days, and when you start a new job in a new city with a new life, not knowing a soul, a lot can go wrong. You understand that they don't have to take you in, they don't have to be nice to you. The people that I dealt with during my recruitment process were all wonderful, but their job was to recruit somebody, and they would naturally be nice. But I got some advice as to who to start talking to, because it was very important to me that I begin to network here and build those friends and those colleagues. So I remember a meeting. I was asked to go over, and I'll say it was John Scoville, who owns Woodbine, and they are hotel owners. They have a very wonderful and glorious past here in Dallas. And Mr. Scoville called me on my first day, and he was one of those sort of very modest. Hey, you don't have to call me back. I'm just calling to wish you, to welcome you to the city. And I said to somebody, who's John Scoville? He said, you need to call him back right away. So, and Mr. Scoville said, I'd be happy to, come on over to my office. So I was there probably the next week. So Mr. Scoville is, the people on this that are listening to this podcast, if you know who he is, you'll smile at this. He was just the most warm and generous person to meet with me. But I met with his two sons that are business partners with him. So I sat down with his son Dupree, and I said, Dupree, who do I need to meet with? And he said, okay. And he went through his phone and he's texting me all these different names. So I left their office and I went back to my office. By the time I got back to my office, Dupree had sent 6 emails and said, you need to meet this guy, he's new. And I took the ball from there and I closed the loop and I met with them. But it was so gracious from somebody, you think about the way people garner power. Power is in a lot of ways based upon who you know and how you can get things done. And that's based upon your contact list. And I've found that Dallas shares their contact list with anybody at all that could potentially lessen their power. And if I know the same person you do, then why are they going to need you, or they're going to need me, that kind of thing. But people were so generous about sharing that and making sure that that graciousness flowed from the start to the end. And that was, I think, my second or third day on the job. And I thought, okay, this is my kind of town, because, and I think anybody that lives in Dallas knows this is one of the largest cities in the country, but it is so small in terms of people knowing each other and getting things done. And I call this place a 2-phone call town. You can get anything done in 2 phone calls. And that is because people want to see you succeed, and they have this desire to make sure that the entire city gets lifted. So that was the thing that really started me. I thought, okay, this is a different type of city than the ones I've lived before. And I lived in some wonderful cities with incredibly friendly people. That is not to bash anything else, because I've had a great run. And but I'll tell you that this city is very different than most.
That's a great story. As you shared that story, I was sitting there and thinking your customers are always your best salespeople.
Exactly.
Like, right. I
Exactly.
mean, it's just, and so all of a sudden you have 6 more people to talk to.
And they each gave me a number of people to talk to, and it just blossomed. And then finally you get to the point where they're saying, do you know this person? Do you know that person? Yes, yes, yes. So you kind of run out of the circle of that really can make my job easier. And once you know that circle, you can always meet more people, and I do every day. But I can always meet more people. But once you know that sort of that group of people that can really make Visit Dallas successful, then that's when the magic happens. And I was able to get to most of those people within the first 6 or 8 months, even during a pandemic.
And the pandemic is probably a great time because a lot of them aren't, they're working from home, or, it's just a different environment, right? I love that. A 2-call town. It is fantastic.
It is.
I had not heard that. That's great. Well, you said something at the meeting, and I posted our picture, and I mentioned it because I thought it really stood out. And you said today's visitors is tomorrow's talent. Yeah. I just thought that was like, it just stuck. Because we all know right now in the business community and the HR community, that's a big topic right now, is talent. How are we going to get the people to do what we do? And so as you shared that, I mean, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm writing that down. Talk a little bit about that and what you meant by that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wish I was the one that authored that, but I ripped it off from somebody else, which I do all the time. All the best ideas I take from other people that are much smarter than me. So
I gotta raise my hand too. I'm the same way. I'm just everybody's sharing. I'll just keep sharing it.
I don't know how without having an original thought in my head, I don't understand how I actually got here to Dallas, but I think I successfully ripped off other people's ideas. But it just goes to this, is through my career, I came to Dallas a number of times because this is where a lot of conventions in my industry had taken place. So I came into the city. I knew the city well. I've been coming here since I was in my early 20s, because back then Hilton had a call center here in Dallas, actually in Carrollton. So I started to come to Dallas before almost any other place. And if you would have told me back then, hey, one of these days you're going to end up in Dallas, I would say that's probably not going to happen. I just don't see the path there. But I even look at it in my own life. I have a daughter who's a PhD candidate at the University of Virginia, and I would have never sent her to Virginia if I hadn't visited there first. And knowing that the people there are friendly, it's a beautiful place, it's safe. So the visit is the essential first date to deciding as to whether you're going to come back. And you never know in this world, because we're very transitory as a population, that when you formulate your opinions about a city pretty quickly. If you don't like the city or the people are not nice, then you're just not going to look at that city as an opportunity. And especially if I'm going to go to a city to relocate my business, to physically invest in purchasing something, or to start a family, or to go to school, it starts with a visit. And I know that the tourism industry is seen as a very fun industry, and that makes sense. That it is, it's associated with fun and good times. But the reality is in Dallas and around the Metroplex, it's almost a $7 billion industry. It's one of the major industries that provide taxation, that provide jobs. And the bottom line is that without it being a wonderful first visit, then we would fail to survive, because we have in Dallas, what I found out early is that there's a lot of people here that live in Dallas that are not from Dallas. And you just need to pick up a newspaper in the last 3 years to know that the country is relocating to Texas, and specifically to the Dallas area. And so we have a natural ability or a natural wanting to welcome strangers from the outside, because a lot of us were strangers at one point in time as well. And I think that spirit in Dallas has helped us really be successful, because we're getting a net gain of more people coming in and investing in this city. And that is at the expense of other people that are losing those people. So there are some cities that are in a net positive, like us, and then there are others that are in a net negative because people are no longer wanting to live in the city. So the visit is an important first component.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's really important. And so what are some of the things that you're doing to bring in some of this talent that will get some of the leaders listening today get excited? Any things that you're working on now?
Now, that's pretty secondary to what we do. Our job is to bring people in to spend money. So we really focus on bringing money from the outside in, and that is through tourism. But that is by definition, we're bringing somebody in that's going to spend money in Dallas, purchase goods and services, stay in a hotel, rent a car, park in our parking lots. And that is by definition other people paying money and essentially taxes for us. So that's a good deal to have when you have other people coming in. But the offshoot of that is I'm working closely with economic development corporations here in Dallas for strategies and tactics, how we can actually tie those people in. So for instance, we have services that do geofencing around Dallas. And I've asked and I've challenged our local economic development people, tell me where your pain points are. So if we need, for instance, engineers, I'm making that up because I don't know.
Sure.
If we need engineers, then we can look at our database and say, we have an engineering conference coming in May 2023. Why don't we partner to be able to feed messages to their phones and to their devices that talk about Dallas as a great place to work and play, not just visit. And so those messages start a conversation. And I've done that before in my past, is that if you purposely put messages together to target certain customers or certain people that can actually come and invest and change their life and come in and live here in Dallas, then that's where it starts. So we have that captured audience, because if the engineering convention is in Dallas, then that is what is known as forced tourism. If you wanted to go to that convention and you want that education and you want that ability to intermingle with engineers, then you're coming to Dallas for that. So while you're here, you're a captive audience for us to send message and to engage.
That's fantastic. So as I'm sitting here, I've been to a couple of conferences that I've been to. So that would be part of it. And one was Worldwide ERC. We had the conference at the Anatole Hotel a
Yeah.
couple of times, which was a fantastic hotel. And then I went to the LinkedIn conference, and I believe that was in 2019. And I thought that was great. But it was the first time I'd been over to the conference center you talked about.
Are you talking about the one in Dallas? It's the
Yes,
P. Billy Hutchinson Convention Center.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we actually have the ability, and we've been given the permission to actually build a brand new convention center on this site of where it is right now. So we're going to operate this convention center in Dallas and at the same time begin building the new one on the same campus, but it's going to go from an east-west orientation to a north-south orientation. So in 2029, which seems like a long time away, but it's really not,
It's a blink.
we should have a brand new convention center in Dallas.
K. Bailey Hutchinson's Convention Center. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I just remember going to that, and I remember it was a small conference, but it just seemed everything kind of seemed empty where we were at the particular time. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time there. But when you had mentioned, hey, there's a long-term vision here, I kind of got excited about that. And you started talking about some of the things around that. Well, let me ask you this: whenever the Super Bowl, of course, it didn't come to the city of Dallas, but the area, it came to Arlington. Is that something Visit Dallas would plan? What about maybe even a World Cup?
So we actually were part of the local organizing committee that brought the Super Bowl to, well, let's call it Dallas and the Metroplex.
Sure.
Because,
Okay.
for us, if something is at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, we get 70% of the rooms that stay because of just sheer numbers of hotel rooms in Dallas compared.
Okay.
So we work very closely with our counterparts around the Metroplex. So, while we are in competition for some things, especially for sports, we work as a unit. But we are working together for the 2026 FIFA World Cup to make Dallas and surrounding areas a host city. And in fact, on the 16th of June, we're going to find out, and I'm hoping that Dallas is in part of the host city. They're going to announce the host cities on that day, and we hope to be in that list. So some incredible things. If Dallas is chosen for a World Cup match is equivalent to a Super Bowl. And if we have up to, I think, 6 or 7 matches we could get, that could mean 6 or 7 back-to-back Super Bowls for Dallas and the Metroplex.
Wow.
Staggering. It's the world's largest sporting event, is FIFA World Cup soccer.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. And I know that there's another area, the Cotton Bowl, right?
Yes.
I've been going to the OU Texas games for years, and I think there's certainly opportunity there as well.
Well, part of the fundraising for the convention center expansion, there's one more part that we're going to ask voters when they go to. We're going to ask Dallas voters when they go to the ballot in November. There will be a referendum on there. And the referendum will ask them if they support a 2% increase in the hotel tax. So we're calling it a tourist tax. Tourists in Dallas will be asked to pay 2% more. So by extension, unless a local person is thinking of spending a lot of time in hotels here in Dallas, they will not be paying that tax. And that 2% will fund the last portion of the convention center, and it will actually divert $300 million to Fair Park for much needed improvements, including the Cotton Bowl. So I don't think don't want to sound like I'm overstating this, but Texas OU deserves a better facility to meet it. And the tradition is here in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, but a lot of that Cotton Bowl was built 40, 50, 60 years ago, and it needs a major upgrade. And I think if we don't upgrade the Cotton Bowl, we're going to eventually lose Texas OU. So we can't have that happen. And what a gift it would be to actually fix that on the backs of people that don't live here.
Yeah, that's, oh man, that's exciting. Okay, so that vote's coming up in November. I'll
It
put
is.
some links in the show notes for people if they want to learn a little bit more. Let me ask you this: when you have these groups come in and you're showing them, the great city of Dallas and all that we have to offer, and of course you have a website that I'm on, post visit dallas.com.
Yes, sir.
What do you what kind of feedback are you hearing? Are you hearing that, hey, this is great, this is on our list? What do you hear?
Okay, so Visit Dallas website is now a work in progress. We're going to actually launch a brand new website in the fall. So
Okay.
for those people that go onto it, just know that it's a nice website, but it's going to be much better. But
Okay.
to answer your question more directly, people, what they love about Dallas is that it's the shopping and the food here is extraordinary. That's what sets us apart. And then just the neighborhoods, how each neighborhood is so different than the other, and that the authenticity that you get with all the cultural groups that make our city. So you've got a huge Latino, you've got a huge Black population here, you've got a huge Asian population here, and of course everything else in between. And they all draw that out. Their influence is drawn out in architecture and in food and in just experiences that you can have. And our customers that come in, our visitors love it. And that is why they keep coming back to Dallas. But it's seen as a place where you can get a wonderful meal and you can go out on the town and have great shopping. And it's all very centralized. And of course, our sports are second to none. So any sport that you're into, it's being played here in Dallas.
Yeah, I
And
mean, we were close to having both the Mavericks and the Stars in the championship just
yeah,
not too long
yeah,
ago. Well,
exactly.
let me ask you this question, because one of the things I got excited about was whenever the park connected downtown and uptown. Have you heard of any thoughts around just continuing to build that particular area? I think that's kind of a neat
Which park
area.
are you talking about? There's an I-30 park that is being built over near the zoo, and then there's of course Clyde Warren Park will have their new phase,
Yep.
and then the convention center is also going to cap I-30 in front of, and behind the convention center to make way to bring the convention center over top of I-30 and put it into the Cedars. So there's a lot of activity
That's
of capping highways and creating new parks, but that is a huge push forward for our city officials to create a lot more green space and a lot more parks. That's an important part of making Dallas special.
Yeah, no, Clyde Warren Park is what I was referring
Yeah.
to, but I'm glad you
Oh, you were. I'm
shared.
sorry.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you shared that, because I was sitting there thinking, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, that area. I mean, I can just see the vision of what that could look like.
And you think about what will happen if you cap I-30, it will be a natural bridge between the Cedars and downtown. And that has been, quite frankly, where the convention center turned its back on the South here in Dallas. And so what you do is you cap I-30, you take the convention center and you move it north-south, then it opens up all that land for redevelopment and for people to say that I don't know if I'm in downtown, I don't know if I'm in the Cedars, it is just one developed space. And I think that's exactly what Dallas needs. And I think a lot of us, you may not realize it, we're going to 10, 15 years from now, you're going to say, I remember when this was happening and what this has developed into. It's going to be a game changer for Dallas in so many levels. It's going to be an opportunity that will forever change our city for the good.
I love that. Everything you're talking about, it really is exciting when you think about what's possible when it comes to the city of Dallas. Hey, let me ask you, there's probably a lot of listeners that are wondering, well, how can I help? And I'm so grateful you coming on and you shared. And I just wanted to kind of give a big high level overview of all the exciting things going on, because I want people to hear there's excitement happening
There
here.
is.
How could listeners in the Dallas area, how can they help?
Well, let me say that Dallas's best days are ahead of us, and they're pretty good days these days. So, but how they can help is to inform themselves about this ballot measure, this referendum measure,
Mhm.
and to make an informed decision and to show up at the polls. And I can't tell people how to vote, but I would like them to be aware of all of the positives that can happen if they choose to vote to raise hotel tax for people that don't live here. So that's as cryptic as I can be, but in my position, I can't tell people how to vote, but I'm hoping that they get informed and they go out to the polls, because I believe that if they do that, then we're going to have a new Fair Park and a new convention center.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I get excited. Again, I was excited when I went to that event, just heard you talk, and now all of a sudden here, asking you a little bit more and getting to share this with the audience. I'm really excited about Dallas ahead,
Yes,
moving
well,
ahead.
I think in particular, the FIFA World Cup coming in 2026 is
Yeah.
the thing that's going to light us and just get us so excited about Dallas and why we're here. And I think it's going to be great news when it happens.
Hey, I want to ask you a few questions as we go to. It's time to accelerate on our last few questions on the show. First question I want to ask you is, do you have a favorite restaurant? I mean, again, on the website, it does show a lot of restaurants. Do you have a favorite or favorites?
I have some favorites. One of mine is Town Hearth, which is in the Design District. I love that place, and Torelli's, which is in the Lower Greenville area. And those are my two kind of go-to. But I live not far from Bishop Arts, and so I could name a number in Bishop Arts that I love. So yeah, in my job I get a chance to get around town, and I'm lucky I'm not significantly heavier than I am.
Okay, I got to put it on my list to go to lunch with you sometime and take.
Yes, let's do it.
I love it. Hey, what about for people listening, things to do in Dallas? What are things that you've kind of seen that people seem to like to do? And one of the things I was going to mention is I have a couple of grandchildren, and my wife and I are going to be taking them to the Dallas Aquarium here in a couple of weeks. Yeah. So what are a couple of things to do that you would share?
Clyde Warren Park, for
there
sure.
Yep.
If the kids are small, let them splash around Clyde Warren Park. There's a bunch of things to do, and it's such a beautiful setting and so safe. And then the second one is the Arboretum. You can't beat the Arboretum right near White Rock Lake. So those are two of my go-tos among so many others, but there's so much for kids to do. But you hit the nail on the head, and of course the zoo. You can't beat the zoo.
I love it. I love it. Okay, here's my final question, Craig, and this is a question I ask all my guests. It's one of my favorite questions, and the question is, Craig, 10 years older, is knocking at your door, and you're going to go answer that door. What's he going to tell you?
He's going to tell me that the best decision I ever made was to move to Dallas. Changed my life, and it has. I'm telling you that every experience that I've had, every great experience, every terrible experience, every disappointment, every time I've actually had success, it has all led me to this time and place right here and now. And I had no idea that any of this was going to happen before I got through the front door, but a convention center on the horizon, all the social change that we can have as a result of as a result of the new convention center and the redevelopment of that area near the Cedars, that is what that 10 year from now, Craig will say.
That's a wise 10 years older, Craig Davis. That's fantastic. I love that. Hey, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Okay, so for anyone that's listening that say, you know what, I want to learn more about that, or I'd like to connect with Craig to share some thoughts. What's the best way to connect?
Just email me. It's really simple, Craig, CRAIG @visitdallas.com. And I answer emails, and I'm very accessible.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. And again, I appreciate you coming on, just sharing your wisdom and perspective and getting us excited about Visit Dallas. And I can't wait to share this conversation here in a couple of weeks.
I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Hey, we'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce.